Hello there, everyone, and welcome to the Real Life Process podcast. I am so excited to be here with you. This is episode number 177, and we have done some pivots. So let me share with you that every week here on the podcast, I invite you to listen in as we share tips, stories, and practical action steps that can lead to living a life from rest, not rush, so you can do what truly matters. We'll share ideas from our signature content and the real life process and help you thrive in your work and your business. So we cannot wait, because this pivot means that as of this week, these podcasts will be live, not only audio, but video as well. So you can check us out over on our YouTube channel at The Real Life Process. We are so excited this summer as we dive here in May 2022 to start bringing you the podcast in video form as well. So this is an experiment. I'm always about trying something new, and this is a way for us to share with you. So if your learning style is more from a place of video content, then we're excited for you to be a part of our YouTube channel. And we'd really love it, no matter whether you're listening in through all of your favorite podcast apps or you found us through the YouTube video. We would love for you to subscribe to our YouTube channel. And here's why, and this is a great tip for those of you that might want to use YouTube as a platform. Once we get to 100 subscribers, 100 subscribers on our YouTube channel, then we can do some different things with our URL at YouTube and really up our game on that channel. So we would love for you to help us out, if you would, and subscribe to our YouTube channel at The Real Life Process on YouTube. I just about said .com, and that is not correct. It's just The Real Life Process. Go to YouTube and then search for The Real Life Process and subscribe to our channel. So each and every week, we're not changing up much about the podcast besides the fact that we're doing it on video, and that video will be uploaded to our channel. But each and every week here on the podcast, we share some of our content from our signature program called the Real Life Process. It's a framework that helps you develop a unique modern day rule of life through self-discovery, 90-day actionable projects, time management, and then that sustainability piece that for us comes through the spiritual practices that we include within the process. So together we put all those things and we actually craft something that we call a modern day rule of life. How to find the extraordinary moments in the everyday things. So whether you're listening in or now watching to grow yourself or to grow your business, we're just glad you're here. We're just glad that you're a part of the Real Life Process community. So as I said, our pivot this summer as we look is to go back through all of our signature content. So on our episode last week, we actually talked about the fact that we're going to go through each and every piece of our signature content, all 4 components, over the next 6, 7, 8 weeks here on the podcast. We feel like with the book coming out this fall on November 1st, the book will actually release out in the big wide world of at bookstores and on all of your favorite platforms online. And when the book releases, it will have the signature content of the Real Life Process inside of it, as well as some of my personal story. And so as the book is coming out, we felt like it would be really helpful here to those of you that are our listeners and now our video watchers, I guess, to go back through and talk about the signature components in each of them as we walk through the podcast. Excuse me. And so we want to dive into that today in our very first recording here that we'll be doing live on our YouTube channel, as well as for those of you that are listening through your podcast app. So let's dive in. And one thing I will tell you is if you like some things visually, I will be sharing some visual components over on the YouTube channel. I promise to those that are listening that it will be easy for you to follow along, and I won't dwell too much on the visual part. So don't freak out that you're not going to be able to see anything, but I am going to be sharing some things over on our channel. So let me get those pieces ready as well. And let's just dive in. So first of all, if you're not familiar with the real life process, what we're really crafting is from 4 different components that we walk through. We're crafting something that we call a modern day rule of life. Now, that might not be a term that you're familiar with, and it's actually just saying, in a written form, in a verbal form, this is the way I want to live my life. These are the things that matter to me. But in order to get to that place, we actually walk through 4 different ways of looking at it that we call components. So let me just walk through those 4 components first, give you a little bit of definition for those, and then we'll dive in. So just to give you a little bit of backstory, back in 2016, when I entered into the coaching space, I'd been in ministry for almost 15 years, and I entered into the coaching space. Before ministry, I'd done a lot of entrepreneurial type businesses, and I just loved being in that space. So when I stepped out of ministry, I really looked at what could I do that still was in a way of helping and serving and encouraging and equipping others, but also was something that had that entrepreneurial part to it as well. I love to speak, I love to teach, I love to train, and I came across coaching, and I was introduced to the tool of coaching, and I just loved it. But in 2016, I also really was going through a lot of spiritual formation in my life. I had joined a community where I was learning some spiritual practices and just some different things. And through that, I really wanted to put those 2 things together. And I love a process. I love a plan that I can follow. And I remember Natalie Ekdahl, one of my mentors at the time from a community called Biz Chicks. Natalie said to me, "Why are you trying to do someone else's framework or someone else's work? Why don't you create your own?" And from that, the idea of the real life process was born. And there's a lot of backstory to that I actually share in my new book that's coming out this fall. But that's kind of the nuts and bolts of where the process came. It really came from my own story, my own love of putting things into action, as we talk about in the middle 2 components, but also knowing who you are and whose you are and who you are in your being. So let me walk you through these 4 components and how they came together and how they come together to help you craft your modern day rule of life. The first one we call real life being. Real life being is defining what really matters to you in your life and in your work, and creating a document that we call a real life view document. We'll talk about that more on next week's episode of the podcast. But this real life view document actually becomes a map, a way for you to follow and be in the world. It's 2 pages. Page 1 is about your being. Page 2 is about your doing. And it gives you a map and a framework to walk through and to sit with during that 90-day period. And so we'll talk about that more on next week's episode, but that is component number 1. And we dive into that component using tools like needs and values, using personality tools. We love the tool of the Enneagram, so that's the one that we use the most. We talk about areas of focus in your life. What are the big rocks that matter? We come up with your real life statement. And we define things like what are your abilities, what are your gifts. So we really look deep at who you are in your real life. Who are you in your being? That's all part of that very first component. The second component that we look at in the real life process is what we call real life action. And in this process, in this component, we're actually taking your areas of focus, things like your health, your fitness, your self-care and soul care, maybe time with your family that you've identified that matters to you, or your profession. And we're looking at those areas of focus and we're saying, what are the things that I want to move forward with in the next 90 days around a few of those rocks? Now, this is where a lot of people get stuck. They think that every part of their areas of focus, and we usually say for our clients that 5 to 7 areas of focus is really good to define in your life. Well, you cannot do actionable steps forward in all of those areas of focus at the same time. And we want to let go of the guilt and the shame and the beating ourselves up, the crazy tapes that play in our head that we're not doing enough. And we want to get really clear in this second component about what am I working on in the next 90 days and what actionable steps am I taking. So we're creating 90-day actionable projects to move us forward out of our real life view document, out of those areas of focus that we wrote down. And it's really getting clarity around the things right now in my life that I want to focus on. That's what we do in component number 2. And then in component number 3, we dive into real life time. Now, real life time is creating this component. We're actually putting it into your everyday, ordinary life. And we're creating a framework to order your calendar so that each day matters and becomes an extraordinary day. Now, when we get to this podcast episode, it's going to be so fun because we're actually going to walk through the way that we block time here at the Real Life Process, and you're going to be introduced to that framework. We have 4 different ways that we block time onto the calendar so that our life can live in harmony and we really can live out of our best selves and move into these actionable steps, these actionable projects that we've created in the second component. So I'm excited when we get to that episode of the podcast. It'll be in a few weeks. And then the 4th component is around the sustainability. Now, if you are seeing this visually on our YouTube channel, you would see the visual of our logo. And that logo has a triangle in the center and 3 arrows around the outside of it. And these 3 arrows really come from this 4th component that we call real life living. These arrows are about being able to sustain a program where you know your real self well, you're managing your real life, and you're doing the work that you're called to do in this season of life. These 3 arrows represent the last component, which is real life living. And that is, how am I resting? How am I renewing? And how am I reviewing? The 3 R's. And when you look at this logo, you'll see that those arrows actually turn backwards. And the reason for that is it is about the slowing down. It is about the taking of the time, taking a day to rest on a regular basis, both weekly and quarterly and yearly, taking time to renew. What are the hobbies? What are the things that you enjoy? And taking time to review on a regular pattern of routine and behavior. And so just visualize, if you will, if you're listening in, what that looks like to see these 3 arrows spinning backwards or turning backwards actually through this process. And that really does help to capture that to live into your real life process, you are sustaining it on a regular basis through rest, renew, and review. So those are the 4 components of the process that we'll be talking through over the next few episodes here on the podcast: Real Life Being, Real Life Action, Real Life Time, and Real Life Living. And, just to give you a little bit more backstory of the process and where it came from, one of my favorite books that I have, that has become a part of my story, is a book called The Velveteen Rabbit. And it comes through the story of our son, Eric. Our son, Eric, actually passed away from addiction at the age of 30. So this fall we'll be celebrating that 5-year anniversary of Eric's life. And through Eric's life and through his story, I was introduced to the book, The Velveteen Rabbit. I write about it in the book that's coming out this fall. And there are a couple of quotes from that book that I want to share here on the podcast because it really is about how do I become real? How do I live into who I really am and who I was created to be? And I love this quote. There's a couple of them. I use them all throughout the book. It says, he longed to become real, to know what it felt like. And yet the idea of growing shabby and losing his eyes and his whiskers was rather sad. He wished that he could become it without these uncomfortable things happening to him. I would never want to lead you astray to say that the real life process is easy, that living into these 4 components is an ongoing journey as you create your modern day rule of life. But I will tell you that it is worth it. It is worth it to stop living with your hair on fire, which is a phrase I often use, to lean into these things. I'd love to share with you just a piece from one of our certified facilitators. This is also a part of the book. And this certified facilitator's name is Jana Thomason, and this is what she says in the book. The real life process gave me personally a structure that actually created freedom. When I say a structure, I mean a rhythm. I mean rhythms, boundaries, and systems. The structure created support that I needed to thrive and feel free. I realized that fun was something I valued, and it was an important part of my areas of focus. So I created a local bucket list that included things like a hot air balloon festival, sunflower fields, pickleball, and kayaking. I want you to hear from Jana, and I'm showing this actually on the YouTube channel so you can read the entire quote. But I want you to hear from Jana how actually living into a structure, living into the components of the real life process has helped her actually find freedom. One of the assessments that we use in the beginning of the process is called Needs and Values. We have a free download of that on our website that you can download and get a free intro to needs and values. What are my top 5 needs? What are my top 5 values? And when Jana realized that one of her values was fun, she actually started to look around in her local community and said, what are things within a certain miles distance that I could lean into that would be fun? And I just love that. I love that Jana was leaning into that she was showing up for that by finding her needs and values, writing out her real life process and coming to those places. So I just wanted to share with you that this is a journey, and it may feel like it's a journey that's long and that takes a while, but let's begin. Let's dive in. Here's another quote from the Velveteen Rabbit. It says, "You become." It takes a long time. That's why it doesn't happen often to people who break easily or have sharp edges or who have to be carefully kept. Generally, by the time you are real, most of your hair has been loved off, your eyes drop out, you get loose in the joints, and you're very shabby. But these things don't matter at all because once you are real, you can't be ugly again except to people who don't understand. Part of the real life process is letting go and being okay with being shabby and feeling a little bit shabby. Some of you that are listening in or watching may already feel that. And you're like, how could I do this differently? So as we go on this journey this summer here on the podcast to help you create a modern day rule of life, I want to give you the definition of what that is as we go through the process. A rule of life is a commitment to live your life in a pattern of behaviors, rhythms, and routines. It's crafted through discernment in partnership with God as you consider the way God designed you and the values He's inscribed upon your heart. Once discovered and written, it serves as a tool and a framework that can help you make decisions for your life and determine how to best order and align your days. We love leaning in and helping people here at the Real Life Process to do those things, to live into how they want to create and craft their modern day rule of life. And we look forward to helping you do the same. So we hope that those of you who are listening in or those of you who are watching will come on the journey with us this summer as we dive into the Real Life Process. You can catch us in lots of different places. You can download our free needs and values. We'd love for you to do that at therealifeprocess.com. You can join us on Facebook in our Real Life Process community, where we'll continue these discussions together. And now you can follow us on YouTube and subscribe to the YouTube channel at the Real Life Process over on YouTube. So thanks for listening in to this episode of the Real Life Process podcast. We are so excited that you're joining us. If you want to grow your impact and increase your income, you can also receive done-for-you content and one-on-one life and business coaching and connect with us as a community. Just visit therealifeprocess.com to learn more about either coaching with us, walking with us through our content that we create, or even becoming one of our Real Life Process facilitators, where we can certify you to use the content of the Real Life Process. So make sure you subscribe in all the places and in all the things so you can be part of our community. And remember this, every ordinary day has extraordinary moments. You just have to look for them. We'll be back next week with more of the Real Life Process podcast.